I'm Chip Freud, and this is the Artist Spotlight, conversations with contemporary artists based on 5 simple questions that explore the artist's journey, creativity, and sources of inspiration. Welcome to another episode of the Artist Spotlight podcast. Today, I am joined by Maureen Scullin. Maureen is a painter working primarily in oils and acrylics, specializing in realistic fine art and portraits. Maureen calls Fuquay Varina home, and I'm pleased to welcome her to the Artist Spotlight. Maureen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Chip. This is really awesome that you're doing this to spotlight artists around our area. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's been fun. So as we do in each episode, can you share with our audience a project that you maybe just finished or something you're working on, just to kind of ground them in what you're up to today?
Sure. Right now, I'm doing some commissions for people. I do very realistic portraits and so people, animals, but I'm also got a big project I'm doing where I'm going to do a watercolor, 16 by 20 watercolor of a subject, and they're figurative drawings and paintings. And then I'm going to also duplicate that in oils. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to grow as an artist. And I feel I learn a lot when I do watercolors, and I'm going to apply it to my oils.
Interesting. Okay. I've heard a number of artists who will work in another medium to sort of inform their art in their primary medium. So that's another example of that.
Exactly. It makes you make decisions quickly in watercolors, where in oils you may keep pushing and pushing. So I'm hoping that it will help me. Once I hit the oils, I've got a lot of those decisions made.
Interesting. Well, I'm as a photographer, the digital world, it gets to be very easy just to keep shooting, and your process gets fast and you don't worry about things. Well, I'm actually planning on doing a film project, because I haven't touched film in decades, to slow my process down. Sort of a similar, I think, idea of, all right, how do I get better and my primary medium by going back to something that makes me think and operate differently?
Exactly. That's exactly the premise of what I'm doing.
Very cool. Well, the first question is, what is your earliest memory of making art of any kind?
Well, I come from an artistic family, and I remember a project I was assigned in first grade. And I worked on that, and I got a little bit of influence from my mom and my dad. And then my fondest memories, earliest memories, are working on my art in my dad's art studio. He was also an artist. So those are great, like little kid memories of sitting there and doing, drawings and watching my dad paint and saying, someday I'd like to do that.
And you've clearly followed in his footsteps.
Mm-hmm. I have.
So some of this is already, I think, explained, but let's dig to a little deeper. Is, what brought you to your current medium of oils and acrylic, and now I learn a bit of watercolor as well, and what keeps you in those media? What do you like about them?
Well, watercolors continue to scare the death of me. I mean, so I graduated from watercolors to acrylics. They dried too fast, so I went to oils. And then I also worked as an illustrator when I was younger for a number of years, and I had deadlines. So those deadlines would, be rearing their ugly heads, and oils don't dry fast. So I found alkyds. My dad suggested alkyds, which they act exactly like oils, but they dry faster. I don't use those as much, but I will use them from time to time. But I will go back to my watercolors, as I was mentioning earlier. I do love watercolors. They're just really scary. And if you do a 16 by 20 drawing and you get everything in place and you hit it with your watercolors, you've got to say, oh my God, I hope the best happens. And things happen that you can't even imagine that are absolutely incredible, but it could go the other way too. So yeah, so I'm going to challenge myself.
Okay. What inspires your art? Where does it come from? Obviously, commissions have their own direction, but for the things that you do outside of commission, where do those inspirations come from?
They come from inside. I have Always, always loved it. It's my happy place. It is, I can't not paint almost every day. I absolutely enjoy every minute of it. And I'm constantly looking at different things that I want to paint. I have a huge file of things I want to do. So it's really very easy for me to be inspired. In fact, it's sometimes I need to turn it off because I'm like, I want to do that. I want to do that. I just absolutely love it. And I'm now doing it full time again. And so I'm so grateful that I can do that.
So, what are some of the subjects that tend to float to the top when you're doing the work that is your happy place?
People, I love doing people. I cannot, when I do a drawing on canvas to start it, I can't wait to start painting someone's face. I love flesh tones and all the colors that are within flesh tones. And of course, you're trying very hard to get the likeness of somebody, but you're also trying to capture the way life really is, the way reality really is on canvas. And I can't tell you how excited I get to take that first brushstroke on a face and get started. So those are some of the things I get commissioned to do, people's beloved pets that have passed away. I get commissioned to do a lot of grandchildren from grandparents. They want to capture their kids, their grandkids, even more than the parents, which I find funny. But really, I just look for inspiration in all the different things I see. Lighting is so important to me, and I know you as a photographer understand that. So lighting, if something's captured, if I can sit somebody and light them and paint them in the way I want, all that really inspires me.
Well, I've got tons of respect for painters like you, the ability to capture light. I mean, for me, that's all I'm doing, right? I've got either a film or sensor that's capturing the light, but to be able to render it utilizing paint on canvas, I can't even wrap my head around that. So I've got tons of respect for what you're able to accomplish with that.
Well, thank you. I have respect for photographers too. My husband is a great photographer, and I can't do what he does with his what he captures on film. I can't do it. It's really an art. So I congratulate you too.
So, what advice would you give to artists just starting out?
My biggest advice would be to understand light, like we just talked about, how important it is. Understand color. So, for example, my dad really taught me so much about art and all the different mediums and et cetera. He gave me the three primary colors and said, that's it. That's all you get. You are going to paint from the three primary colors. And so I did. He gave me a color wheel and he said, okay, go for it. And I actually worked with him in commercial art. And so I was like, you got to be kidding me. But it was one of the best lessons I ever had because now I can see a shadow that has more color in it. It has more maybe purples in it. And I know what colors to grab to mix that. I also recommend that young people starting out, older people that want to take up art, that they take classes and they learn the basics. And then you take those basics and apply them to however you want to do your art. And there's a book that I'm going to recommend everybody read, and it's called Drawing from the Right Side of the Brain. I read it about 30 years ago. It changed my life because it teaches you not to see things as your brain tries to make them out to be. So, for example, you look at a tree, your brain says, oh, there's a trunk and there's leaves and there's this and that. No, look at it as shapes,
Yeah.
color. How is the lighting hitting it? I taught some classes to young kids, my daughters and their friends, and some kids were like, I can't draw. And I said, let's turn it upside down. Let's turn it sideways. Now, what do you see? Oh, I see this shape, that shape. I see that shadow. So that's what you try to do as an artist. So I recommend to artists that they read that book and they truly try to see things as they are, not as we perceive them to be.
Well, it's brilliant. And the suggestion, and I've heard of the idea of utilizing and drawing in shapes. Okay, here's a circle, here's a triangle, here's some lines leading in this direction. But the idea of taking your source material and rotating it so that
Right.
you're forcing your brain to just leave the obvious, if you will, alone, I think that's brilliant.
You know what? It really is. And it honestly changed. And I even do it as I'm just observing things. I'll be talking to people and I don't see an eye. I see the way the light hits it and the shape that makes that eye. I don't see it as an eye as our brain wants to draw the eye and the little pupil inside. And the more you can do that, the better you will be able to put that on canvas. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah. Well, cool. One of the parts of this show that I just really enjoy is the last question, which is, what artist should we go check out? This could be somebody you've recently discovered or an old master that you go back to time and time again.
The number one old master I go back to time and time again is John Singer Sargent.
Hmm.
And the reason being is that John Singer Sargent, in just a few brush strokes, if you really look at his work, there's a brush stroke for that shape, there's a brush stroke for that. And I aspire to be that good. In fact, I did a John Singer Sargent for our Fabulous Fakes for Fine Arts League of Cary because I wanted to understand his process more. And that's a good thing for artists to do, especially starting out or, as long as I've been in it. Go to the masters and try to emulate, if you really like them, emulate them. The other one I would recommend is Richard Schmid. Unfortunately, we lost him last year. He was an amazing artist and an amazing teacher. And this is what I truly, truly believe, and I'm sure you do as well. As artists, as creatives, pay it forward. Whatever you've learned, be gracious and pay it forward. So he took, he learned from people that learned from John Singer Sargent and those masters. He said it's so wonderful to pass it on because then that person takes it and makes it their own. But he's one that I would tell people to look up, look at his paintings. They're incredible. The design of his paintings, same with Singer Sargent. Another more is someone that's still with us and is a modern artist is Tina Garrett.
Hmm.
Incredible portraits, incredible flesh tones. I mean, every time I see her pieces, I'm just in awe. And that's another thing. If you go to galleries and you seek out these artists, I remember standing in front of a John Singer in New York City Museum, and I had tears in my eyes because it was like, I cannot believe what he did on canvas. This is incredible. So as a young artist, I would go and search those people. And as an artist like myself, I continue to try to grow. And that's part of it, is constantly seeking out those that are really doing something incredible.
Well, thank you. And you didn't specifically call it out, but I think it's implied in what you said, is where you can get out and see the originals in person.
Yes. Yeah, there's nothing like standing in a museum and seeing it for yourself. And you can really see the flesh tones and you can really see that, the way that someone rendered that building in the background, or there's nothing like it. And so I would encourage people, no matter where you live, there's museums everywhere. Go to them and stand there and look at them. And some museums will actually let artists sit and paint the masters. You get special permission.
Well, and if a museum isn't in your backyard, then find your local gallery. And
Yes,
most galleries will happily allow you to wander and look and ask questions.
you're absolutely right. That's a great idea. And there's some wonderful artists out there that aren't famous
Yeah,
that are sitting in their studio gallery, and we should all go encourage them.
it's
Keep
just
going.
we get inundated with images on Instagram and other places, and it's not the same. And even photographs, where
Yes.
when it gets put down on paper, it changes. Um, whether my own work, it's a very different experience to see it in person versus it is online. But I had the opportunity a couple of years ago. We had the Ansel Adams show come through the North Carolina Museum of Art, and I
Oh,
got to go spend some time, right up close with, original prints, and
oh my
it is
God.
such a different experience. I mean, I've
Yeah.
got Ansel Adams books and all that, and that's nice. But to actually, see a print at the size that he had them printed and using a master printer, wow, it just makes a difference seeing it in person.
It does. And too, that he especially was so particular in the way his pieces were printed. And he even did some of his own in the darkroom. So you're right, standing there looking at this masterpiece and knowing that he took such, I mean, I'm a fan of his as well. Knowing the things that man did and then standing there looking at them must have been absolutely incredible.
Yeah, yeah, that was
Yeah,
definitely a traveling show that if you have a chance and you have any appreciation for landscape photography is a must see.
absolutely. I would love to see his work. Yeah, so would my husband.
But that brings us to the end of our time, and I want to make sure that folks can find your work. And I'll have links to your recommended artists and to all your work in the show notes, of course. But your website is mscullinfineart.com, and you're also on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll have those links. Where else might folks be able to find your work in the virtual world?
In the virtual world, also on a new platform called Musero, which is Musero, and that's at where you can find me. There is at Maureen Scullin Fine Art, and that's a wonderful new platform, very much like Instagram used to be. So I encourage all creatives to go put their stuff there, and then also people that appreciate art to constantly look at it because it's wonderful. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm also on Twitter, and as artists, and Chip, you're going to agree with me, trying to keep up with all this. A funny anecdote, an old friend of my dad's who's an artist put on Instagram a pie, and the pie showed artists years ago, how much time they spent in the studio and how much time they spent on, promoting themselves. And there was a little piece of the pie was promoting. Nowadays, there's this huge part of the pie that social media promotion, and that poor artist has got this teeny little time in the studio.
Well, I don't know if it's quite as dramatic as that because we think about it that way.
Yes.
But even we were just talking about Ansel Adams. The reason everybody knows Ansel Adams is not just because he had fabulous work, which he did, but he was well promoted. Both by his own efforts and as well as partnering up with other folks to promote his work. And he saw opportunities like getting a contract from the U.S. federal government to document the early stages of our national park system, knowing full well that would then, get his work in front of a whole lot of eyeballs.
Right.
So I think it's one of the things that is another piece of advice for every artist is to understand that no matter how wonderful your work is, the idea that you will be discovered is a fallacy. You have to get out and promote your work. You have to be your own advocate until you get to a certain point where you then have other people promoting your work. You got to get out and do the work. Of
right.
Promoting yourself as well as doing the work of creating it.
Right. You just have to find a balance,
Exactly.
I think he was just trying to make light of it because of all the different, but you know what, look at on a positive note, look at all the places that we get to promote ourselves nowadays compared to what there was. And I've gotten a lot of commissions that way. So, and people have bought my art that way, my fine art. So it is a great thing, this balance.
Absolutely. Well, thank you once again, Maureen, and thank you again to our audience for your interest and support in the show. Tune in next time for another discussion with a contemporary artist. Thank you for joining us. This has been the Artist Spotlight with Chip Freund. Find accompanying blog posts at chipfreundphoto.com/blog, and you may subscribe to our show on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you like listening.